Hello, everyone. You've turned into the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm your host, Sergeant Rich Myers with the Indiana State Police Public Information Office. My good friend and boss, and in charge of the Indiana State Police Public Information Office, Captain Dave Burson, is with me today.
It's good to be here. And Rich, I have to keep reminding you, you're a first sergeant.
Yeah, but it's a lot easier just to blurt out sergeant there.
Okay.
So, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thanks for being here. I appreciate you coming in, Dave.
Well, thanks for the invitation.
And we're going to get right into a topic because I think we're going to be able to fill our 15 minutes here very, very easily with what we're going to be talking about. And it's very much on the forefront right now of what's happening in Indiana, and that's kind of what we try to talk about here on the Road Show. But it's the Amber Alerts, and
Yes.
we've had a precedent amount of Amber Alerts this couple of weeks here in Indiana, and people are calling us and want to know what's going on and how things are changing with Amber Alerts. And we've had some changes with this, even with the last Amber Alerts that we've had, and how they're going out and what media we're using to get those out. So I asked you to come on, and you were very gracious enough to do that so we can kind of update people on how these are evolving.
Well, I appreciate the invitation to help explain it. As I've told the media, and all told, the media has been pretty receptive because there's a lot of mystery around Amber Alerts because typically they're pretty infrequent.
Right.
And now, of course, that changed because we had an Amber Alert first on the 26th of September. We had another one on the 27th. And then barely a few days later, October 3rd, we had not one, but two Amber Alerts, one in the morning, one in the afternoon.
That's just unheard of in Indiana.
It's unprecedented. And we have talked about with the alert program what would be our protocol if we had two that were active at the same time.
Right.
And we do have a protocol for that. We've never had to do it. The closest we came to doing that was on October 3rd.
Well, let's do a little background here. Let's explain maybe to the listening public that's not real aware when we got into the Amber Alert business and what the Amber Alert is.
Yeah, we got into this in October of 2002. And that was when the decision was made. A number of other states had an Amber Alert program. I think maybe, and don't hold me to this, it was somewhere between 13 and 20 states had it. So we fell in line with being somewhere around the 20th state to adopt a formal Amber Alert program. And a lot of people don't recognize that the Amber Alert acronym comes from a young lady that was a real person, Amber Hagerman,
Right.
who was abducted and killed tragically in Texas. And from that, the system was named after her. And then later on, media attached a meaning to the word Amber. America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response is what the acronym stands for, besides being her name. So we started our program it was in October of 2002. We didn't have any alerts the first 3 months until the new year, and our first alert was actually February 26th of 2003. But probably the important thing is to talk about what does it require to have an Amber Alert.
Right, because I know we've gotten some inquiries from the media and say, kind of questioning the timetable of what it takes and what exactly is required of each Amber Alert. And I know that you've talked to them and we do require some pretty stringent requirements because we don't want to put everything out.
No, we don't. And we don't.
Right.
Let's talk about what does it take to have an Amber Alert. There are four points that we have to have. First and foremost, excuse me. First and foremost, the child has to be under the age of 18. That's a solid rock. That doesn't change. They have to be under the age of 18. Second point, there has to be credible information that indicates that child is at the risk of serious bodily injury or death. And we get that information from the investigators.
And a lot of times that takes a while to
Yes,
check into.
it does. And it takes some investigative work to do that. The third point is we're looking for descriptive information. And this is where a lot of people get confused. They think we're talking about a description of the child. When we're talking about young children, infants or children that are 4 or 5 years old, most everybody either has black hair, brown hair, blonde hair, blue eyes, brown eyes. We're not talking about a description of the child. We're talking about descriptive information of potential suspects.
Right.
Do we have a named suspect? Do we have a potential vehicle? A good description of the vehicle? do we have a verified license plate number? And that's a key point for some of the changes that have happened with the Amber Alert program since 2002.
Again, I think we're looking at about putting out good information to get good information back.
Exactly. The old saying with computers used to be garbage in, garbage out. The same thing is very similar with an Amber Alert. If you have a generalized alert, you get generalized tips.
Right.
If you have a specific alert, you get more specific tips. And then the last point that we have, it's got to be requested by the agency of record. So just summarizing, under 18 years of age, point number one. Point number two, belief of imminent danger of injury or death. Point number three, descriptive information about suspects, vehicles, plate numbers to make the broadcast worthwhile. Point number four, requested by the investigating law enforcement agency.
And that's another question that's come before you and myself and many of the PIOs around the state. We are administrator of the statewide Amber Alert system that we put out, and agencies contact us, or it could come from within our agency, but that does not prohibit another police agency from doing their own.
That's true. There's no, for lack of a better word, there's no copyright on the words Amber Alert. There are other agencies in Indiana that if they feel that it rises to the level for their purposes, they will declare a localized Amber Alert. But if it doesn't meet the standards that we've outlined, then it will not utilize the statewide system. The benefit of the statewide system is the official name of them are dynamic messaging boards.
Right.
Most other people know the highway information boards that you see in major areas.
Avoid a wreck in this mile marker.
Slow traffic ahead and construction, but they will show the Amber Alert and have the specific information, vehicle description, plate number of the vehicle. Also, the cell phone notification that comes across. People have been exposed to that really only the last 12 months related to severe weather warnings, where you get that loud sound from your phone.
The little squawk
the
that
squawk
comes across.
sound. I'd try to imitate it now, but I don't want people to make fun of me. So that
Not
squawk,
on this show, Dave.
Never,
That would
never. So that loud squawking sound that gets your attention, that's for severe weather and also for Amber Alerts.
Now, when an Amber Alert goes out, the requesting agency, they contact you, say we believe someone's missing. What starts then? Once they contact us, how does that go?
Well, when the agency contacts us, typically they've already been investigating, and typically some of their local media is already aware, and they are completing information in the IDAX and NCIC, the National Crime Information Center, and the IDAX is the Indiana Information Center, where we keep localized information. And that information has to be loaded up into the computers. That's how we find wanted people, missing people, and Amber Alert people that are recorded there.
And that's, again, for maybe the public wouldn't know, but if you or I stopped somebody or somebody out on the road and ran them through the computer, which we do every day,
Yes.
then that would come back as an Amber Alert.
Exactly. It would show that that person was reported missing, that they were a subject of an Amber Alert. It would specifically say that. So
That goes across the country.
And that goes nationwide.
Yes.
Yes, because if somebody's in a vehicle, they're not confined to the state where the child was abducted. They could cross state lines.
Right.
And then we would, of course, want them to be found, so they're in that national database. So along with that information, we're also getting photos. We put those photos on the website. There's a dedicated website for Amber Alerts. We're also preparing an 800 number that if you call the 800 Amber Alert number now, it just goes to a recording and it tells you there is no active alert. But once there is an active alert, that phone number is redirected to the police agency making the report. So they get the tip directly. It doesn't go through a third party.
Okay.
So these are all the things that are put together to make it happen. One of the questions you and I both received is, well, we got the text alert, but there was nothing on the website, or there was something on the website, but we didn't get the text alert, and we didn't get the news release until about 7 minutes later. In a perfect world, if this were a TV show, all of those things would happen instantaneously.
Right.
But we don't live in a perfect world. It takes time for each of those to come out. Usually they fall into place within a matter of minutes, anywhere from 5, 7, 10 minutes of each other, and everything is there and accessible. But we have to have the IDAX, the National Crime Information Center. That has to be in place before we push out an alert.
Well, again, you've tuned into the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. My guest is Captain Dave Burston with the Indiana State Police Public Information Office, and we're talking about the Amber Alert system. We've had quite a few here within the last period here in Indiana, and we've had a lot of inquiries on it, so we kind of wanted to bring it to the forefront and talk about it and how it's changed. And one of the big changes, Dave, that you spoke about is the telecommunications alert through your phone, and that just recently arrived here in Indiana.
That did, and well, it didn't recently arrive. It's been here for a while. We originally opted not to use it because there was some fear, and some people could say the fear was false. Some could say that it's still valid, that we've both heard that tone. And even if you have your phone silenced, that tone, that alert still comes across, and it makes that screeching squawk sound.
Right.
And there have been some discussion that, if you're driving at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're in your car by yourself, and all of a sudden that goes off. Could it startle you? Could it cause loss of control of your vehicle? We've had those questions. I don't think, to my knowledge, that's been a case in any other state that's utilized it. So we thought, well, maybe that really isn't a well thought out position. And we discussed that several months ago, and we put into place to be able to use those alerts. Those alerts are handled through a third-party source, and that's the National Center for Missing and Endangered Children. NCMEC is what it's called, and they are the ones that help coordinate that. So that's another part of the pieces of moving parts that all have to come together for this alert to be successful.
And they also have requirements that they require for us to look through. So there's another time management piece of the puzzle.
So you're passing the information on to them. They desire to have a verified license plate number. If you don't have that, they will reluctantly, if the agency persists, they will put out a release based on a very specific description of a vehicle, make, model, type, maybe something unique to the vehicle, missing a wheel cover or body damage, things of that nature. But they typically want that valid plate number. Another thing that we get asked all the time is it seems like these happen a lot. Now, over the past week, I would have to agree. It seems like it's happened a lot.
Right.
But when you look at the overall stats since we've been doing this, since the program was incepted in October 2002 to the most recent alert that we had this past week, we've actually had 139 requests for an Amber Alert. Of those 139 requests, only 44 have been granted. So right around a third. Of those 44 alerts, 51 resulted in 51 children were recovered. And then tragically, over the course of time from 2002 to today, we have had 5 children that were found deceased. And we have one child, an infant, that is still reported as missing. And we don't have high hopes that child is still alive.
But I think what we're pushing out here, what we want to do is the reason that's such stringent requirements is you don't want this going off every other day and the public finally saying, I'm tired of listening to this.
It becomes the boy that cried wolf. There were some states, and they've changed that now, and I'm not even going to mention the state's name, but their position when they first started doing Amber Alert was every child is precious. I agree. Every child is precious. We will issue an Amber Alert for every missing child regardless of the circumstance. So a child runs away or a child doesn't come home when they were supposed to and the parents are upset, Amber Alert is issued. If we took that posture in the state of Indiana, because children do run away from home, children do sometimes don't come back when they're supposed to, when they're told to, but with the number of runaways that we have, we would be issuing an Amber Alert every 45 minutes.
Wow.
Every day. We don't want to do that. And we don't.
Yeah. Well, again, you don't want to get the boy that cried wolf. Well, Dave, we're out of time. I appreciate you coming in. Again, like I said, this 15 minutes is going to go fast because there's a lot of information to shove out there very quickly. But I thank you for coming in and getting it to the forefront.
Well, I appreciate you having the idea to talk about this. It was a very timely topic to discuss.
Well, again, you've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. My guest has been Captain Dave Burston with the Indiana State Police Public Information Office, talking about the Amber Alert system. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you again next week on the Indiana State Police Roadshow. Roadshow out.